You're listening to Rolling Toe with trucking experts Kevin and Mike Beckett. This is the show where you ask the questions and we give you the diagnosis on how to get the most out of your truck. We'll talk about avoiding wear and tear, knowing your suspension and axles, and how to get more mileage from your tires. We're on the Audio Road. Let's get rolling.
Hello all, this is Mike and Kevin Beckett with our fourth official episode of the Rolling Toe Show.
In 2 months.
In 2 months. We've had a few issues, but we're getting through them. We think we've got all the technical glitches figured out now. We've checked with one of our listeners to make sure they could hear us, so we're going out over the air properly. We have programmed for the full hour show instead of 15 minutes like we did last week. Oops. And because last week's show was so short, we're going to repeat the subject and go through that again so we have a properly recorded program for use in the future. I appreciate all of your patience. We apologize for this, but we are a bunch of amateurs working for free, so what can you expect? The subject for tonight that we wanted to start with, whether we stay with that depends on the questions you have. And by the way, if you have a question for us, push 1 on your keypad on your phone, and you will queue up to be online for us to ask a question. If you push 1 twice, it will take you right back off, and we won't ask you a question because we won't know you want one. The subject I want to discuss tonight is specifications on alignment. You go to shops, they align it, they say it's within specs. Well, what does that mean? I'm a member of the American Trucking Association Technology and Maintenance Council, and I participated in the original task force that developed RP 642, Guidelines for Total Vehicle Alignment. This RP was published in 2000, and membership in that task force included representatives from the major truck, axle, tire, and alignment equipment manufacturers doing business in North America. As I recall, it was in one of the early meetings in 1997 that the subject of specs came up. A survey of the participants revealed a variety of opinions on what was the correct preferred settings and the acceptable tolerances that could be used. The specifications for each company were collected and put on a spreadsheet for study. The comparison showed that the vehicle owner could have 4 different specs to set the alignment depending on the make of the vehicle, or the axle, or the tires, or the alignment machine. Changing the tires on a vehicle, and now you have a different spec because Michelin spec may not be the same as Goodyear spec, or Bridgestone, or Continental. Another alignment system moved from a Hunter to a Beeline, and you get a different spec. Because of this confusion, the group decided to establish some alignment targets for alignment setting. These targets are numbers that the group could all agree on that were acceptable, but did not include tolerances. They were intended as goals to shoot for, not necessarily obtained. My thoughts at the time went in a different direction. I wondered how the various manufacturers came up with their specs. So I took the meetings as an opportunity to talk individually with the reps to learn their development process. After several conversations, I found out they all told me the same basic story with, in general, only a change of names, dates, and locations. So I will now present a Reader's Digest version of the development process as I perceived it. I'll further simplify the story by only addressing one alignment factor, drive axle alignment. Long ago and far away in the land of engineering, a junior chassis engineer was assigned the task of establishing the specs for the alignment of the drive axle. The individual retired to a place of relative peace with all the tools and reference materials needed and contemplated the problem. The first obvious conclusions were that the axle should be centered laterally under the frame and should be at a 90-degree angle to the frame. With this concept firmly in mind, the engineer consulted with the industrial engineer who oversaw plant operations. The industrial engineer pointed out that zero offset and zero angle specs might be perfect in an ideal situation, but they're not building trucks under ideal. The frame rails are not all perfectly identical. Neither are the leaf springs, spring hangers, axle pads, and axles. Similar but not identical means a stack of manufacturing tolerances that can significantly affect the final alignment. As a result, chassis alignment is included in the manufacturing process, but that portion of the build is only allowed between 7.5 and 9 minutes in most plants. And perfect alignment of one or two drive axles is not possible on 250 to 300 vehicles a day. Time and motion studies at the workstation determined the limits that were possible with currently available alignment equipment, and so preferred specs and acceptable tolerances are established. Variables such as part-time help and vacation fill-in workers were added in, and finally specs were published to reflect what was possible for alignments on vehicles leaving that operation. Those are the specs that are used to set alignments on many vehicles today in the conventional alignment shop. The point of the story is that factory specs are build specs, performance specs. When a customer brings a vehicle in for alignment because he is experiencing tire wear handling, aligning to a factory spec usually does not solve the problem. Now, having said all of that,
all right. I got a couple things. First off, now when everybody got together and decided on a spec, you said it was a goal.
It was a target.
A target. And with their target, sort of like the junior engineer in the building operation, the target was a perfect T.
Yes.
They all wanted the vehicle to point perfectly straight.
Yes.
The axle straight with frame, everything straight. That's
yes.
the target. But they realized they're not going to be able to make a perfect T, especially every time.
Right.
I mean, even expecting it when you try, given the shims you've got, given the bushings you've got, given everything else you've got, chances are you're not even going to get a perfect T, much
Correct.
less all.
Correct.
So they accepted more of the V.
Yes, but they don't, in the TMC spec, it doesn't tell you how much of a V you can have.
Right. They just want a goal of 0.
Right.
And, well, it's going to be off. And they don't even say within a 30 seconds.
No, they just tell you, 16. With your equipment, with your capabilities, you get it as close to that as you can.
Okay. Okay. All right. And now this is what they found.
Right.
This is and based on what they found, I think everybody can agree that a factory alignment and the kind of alignment that you get in a typical alignment shop provides a perfectly random set of results.
Oh, absolutely. In the factory, they will diligently recalibrate their equipment. They will spend time training their technicians so that they can operate the equipment effectively and efficiently in the 9.5 or 7.5 to 9 minutes. In the real world, attention to calibration of the machine on a regular basis is not done, and the training of the technician tends to be haphazard at best.
Okay, so for the purpose of the listener, now we just went from the actual specification to the calibration of the equipment that's doing the job.
Mm-hmm.
The calibration, you say that the factory is diligent,
mm-hmm.
but why are they diligent?
Because they've done tests. They bring in a new piece of alignment equipment. They set it up in a test facility, and they will bring in one truck, and they will measure that truck over and over and over again with the same technician 10, 20, 30, 40 times to see how many cycles of use it can take before the calibration is off enough that they can't depend on the reading. Then they establish in the plant, let's say 15 cycles of use or 20 cycles of use. That machine has to be recalibrated.
Now, when they decide it has to be recalibrated, how far off is it?
Well, they'll have their own tolerance. Let's say toe, for example, should be a 16th of an inch towed in, give or take a 30-second. They will run the test in the factory until it's not accurate to that 30-second.
Let's say it's a 30-second. Do we know it's a 30-second?
Well, it depends on each reading, and it depends on each plant. I mean, everybody's got their own.
Everybody's working in their own environment.
Right. But once they set it, they will test it to see how long they can use it and still stay within that. And they won't just test the GRR once. They'll do it once with one operator and get a set of performances. Then they'll bring in a different operator, have him go through the whole test again until they find out what the average is.
Okay.
And then they'll use that to set their standard for how frequently they recalibrate.
Okay. So here we have a set of numbers and a set of cycles, and we understand it could be as little as 20, maybe even less than that.
Right.
Before the equipment itself is no longer providing you a measurement that would be useful.
Correct.
Okay, or at least necessary to get the result that the specification that they wanted to get as close to that T
Right.
as they thought.
Whether the T worked or not in the
Yeah,
alignment,
we didn't even get to
that's
that.
another discussion.
We didn't even get to that. No,
Right.
we're just saying that in order to get to the specification you wanted, you had to do this
Right.
good on calibration.
Right.
And they do that at the factory, but we know they don't do that in the field.
Correct.
The equipment at your local alignment shop may not have been calibrated last year.
That I find frequently.
Right.
When I survey people in conventional alignment shops on how frequently they calibrate, it tends to be, on average, sometime between 6 months and a year. And they might be doing 4 or 5 alignments every day.
Right.
So, and then when the guy comes in to calibrate, and it's usually have to be done by an outsider, he'll spend his time 30, 40, 45 minutes calibrating the machine. He'll give it back to him and say, it's all calibrated now. Great. Was it off? Yes. How far off? Well, a little bit. Well, how much is a little bit? Well, I had to adjust the screw a little. Okay, fine. When did it go wrong? I don't know.
When's it going to go wrong?
Can't tell you. How often do you drop it? I don't know.
Oh, don't drop it.
Oh, yeah. Now we're in a whole other discussion. Okay, so those are the concepts of build specs.
Spec versus the equipment you're using.
Correct.
And whether or not you can get a result close to what would be factory spec. And even if you did that, even if you get within what is known as factory spec with calibrated equipment, we know that the resulting alignment is still
Substandard. Yeah, it's random, and it's not necessarily going to solve your problem because they have a build spec. They have no idea what the performance spec should be.
Right.
They have no idea.
They're just trying to, they're building hundreds of these vehicles a day.
Right.
And they're aligning them in minutes.
Right.
And all they wanted was a spec that would work for who?
Just to get it out the door.
To get it out the door. And not necessarily the best guy in the entire operation of Peterbilt or whoever it is, but the person that's doing the job that day.
Right.
And actually, a little wider than that, just in case he didn't do it right.
Well, yeah, because they had to build in the tolerances to fill in for the vacation fill-in guys, and the guy is out sick and somebody else is doing the work.
And satisfy the warranty engineers.
Yeah, the warranty doesn't want to pay for anything.
Right. So they even took that and broadened it out a little bit more. So just fit within this area that you can drive 2 trucks through.
Mm-hmm.
And for the distance of the shop, you could drive 2 trucks through the field that this alignment.
Well, that's a pretty broad statement. I'm not going to go quite that broad, but let's just say that it doesn't necessarily produce the handling and tire wear you expect.
Okay.
All right. We do have somebody that has a question there. Anybody who wants to ask a question, please punch 1 on your phone. It'll cue you up that you have a question for us. If you punch 1 twice, it'll erase the question, so we won't know you're there. But we do have somebody who wants a question, so let's go to them and see what they got.
All right. Here we go in the 530 area code.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello?
That?
Hello? Okay. Actually, I had more of a question about actual tire wear.
Okay.
I've got a driver's side steer tire that I bought at the exact same time 240,000 miles ago as my passenger side. My passenger side is wearing perfectly even. I've still got about 30 seconds left on it. Working great. On the driver's side, if you can kind of just picture looking at it, starting at the inside, it's got the 5 ribs on it. That first rib is 3/30 seconds lower than the rest of the tire. And then if you go on ahead and come over the groove right there that would be between the 4th and 5th on the outside of the tire, there's I don't know if you can call it really a groove, but it's kind of wearing really funny right around there as well, and that's probably another 4/30 seconds lower there as well. And I don't know if there's something that I'm doing wrong with this, or if it's just the roads that I'm running. I do run a pretty low regional run. I stay west of Chicago 99% of the time.
Okay. The right front tire is wearing fine. The left front tire is wearing bad. The dominant wear is on the inside next to the frame, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. If you lay your hand flat on the tire, you're probably driving that fast. You can't do that. But
Yeah, I'm driving it right now. But
slid your hand across the face of the tire toward the frame and pull your hand out, the odds are it'll feel a little rough going in and fairly smooth coming out. And that would indicate we have a slight toe out feathering in the right front tire. Now, I'm going to assume that is correct. The next thing would be, does the truck tend to want to pull slightly to the right?
No, not at all. No. If the roads, granted, I'm running a lot in California and Oregon, so the roads are rough. But if I'm on a smooth road, it'll go straight down the road.
Okay, cool. And it doesn't want to follow cracks or hunt at all?
Occasionally, yes. If I start getting into like the divots and whatnot, then where the road has been really worn from change or whatever, then it'll follow those all day long. The other thing that was kind of puzzling me is Say again?
How many miles do you have on the tires?
I think he said 200,000.
200,000.
About 396. I put them on at 152, so 240-ish, 245 almost.
Right. Two items. First of all, I think you have 0 toe or maybe a 32nd of an inch of toe out. Just a very slight toe out condition. And with the crown of the road leading the truck to the right front tire is going to kind of be in charge all the time, and the left front tire tends to drag, and that's what will take off the inside edge on it. But the fact that you went 200 means it's not far off. It's off just a little bit. Okay? Now, the second point is, if you tread depth your tires, and the right side's got 8/30 seconds, and the left side's got, 6/30 seconds on it or something?
No, the left on where it's still got the meat of the tire, it's still at 7.5, almost 8. Okay. But where it's wearing down excessively down, that's where it's getting down into the 4s.
Okay. We normally recommend rotating your steer tires, rims and all, every 50 to 80,000 miles, so that the slight variations in wear can be mitigated by rotating the tires back and forth instead of going in and trying to adjust the truck all the time. Okay?
Okay.
And I assume you've never rotated these tires.
No, actually, I was told honestly by my alignment guy not to after I chewed through my first set of tires in 152.
Well, I still recommend rotating steers, same as I recommend rotating your drives, to keep them wearing out as sets even as possible. But in the overall, say if you've gotten over 200,000 miles out of those steer tires, there's not a whole lot wrong.
True.
Yeah, granted. I mean, it is probably one of the longer sets that I've gotten. It's with having that much meat left on that right side, that was what was kind of throwing me along. You know, I mean, I've been trying to keep up on keeping the air pressure up on it. It gets down to 113. I'm back up to 115 with it. You know, that kind of so.
Good. Okay, well, I
do that with my super wides as well. But
you running super wides in the back?
Yeah, I've got super wides in the back. They've got put them on at 175. So 221 on those, and there's almost 13 in the back.
That's great. Sounds like
right.
Yeah, you're doing fine there. If you wanted to have somebody try to align it a little tighter on the toe in, just a small adjustment would be all it is. And then I would just rotate the tires periodically in order to keep that stuff from showing up.
Yeah, when you've got as little as...
So 250,000 miles is pretty much the edge of one should be able to explain from these tires.
I've got people who call me up that are complaining they can't get 60,000 miles out of a pair of steer tires. Yeah. If I told them they could get over 200,000, they'd call me a liar.
That's true. We've been called liars.
Okay, well, I thank you for your time.
Sure, you have a great day.
All right.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, there's a classic example of once you produce a result, everybody always wants more. Okay?
That's true.
And I've got no problem with that. It's just that you can get frustrated. You know there's guys out there that are getting 40, 50, 60,000 miles out of steer tires, and you'd like to get them up to the 180, 190,000. And then you've got a guy who's getting over 200,000. He's still running the tires, and he wants more than that.
Yeah, one of my favorite customers was a guy, I think he was out of Wyoming, and he he was getting really good tire mileage. It was driving really straight. But if he got on a really good stretch of road, it was after a quarter mile, he still had to correct and get back to straight. He couldn't keep that thing straight for a whole mile.
Mm-hmm.
So can you do something to get it to drive that straight all the time?
Yeah, but it's probably going to cost you tire wear.
Well, no, then it's going to drive on the left side. Of
Right.
Right. It's just that's wonderful to hear that he's getting that.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Do we have another question there?
We do have another question in the 253 area code, so I suppose we'll go ahead and put him live. Okay, can you hear us now?
Hello there.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. How you doing?
All right, I understand you have a question.
Hello.
Yeah, we know he's.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? I'm not hearing anything.
No, he'll call back. We'll get him on.
Okay. All right.
But going back to our discussion on specifications, this might be jumping topics. I'm not sure. But when you look at in a vehicle that is aligned to within 1/32 inch shim of straight ahead, or a 16th inch shim, let's say. Now, for our purposes, with our measurement system, we figured out that if you're a 16th of an inch shim off of straight ahead, then the drive axle pushes the steer axle to the right, or is attempting to push the steer axle to the right or left, an inch every time it travels from the distance, the 250 inches from the rear end to the front end.
Correct.
So when you end up with that kind of situation, when you know this is what you're dealing with, 1 inch every time the vehicle travels its own length, then if you've got that 1 inch over the 50,000 miles to 100,000 miles that you're driving the thing a year, you've got a significant amount of push on that steer tire towards the ditch. You've pushed it how far?
Well, if you're off by 1/16 from where we want it,
The 16th inch shim on the rear end of the truck. You know what a 16th inch shim looks like? It's
just very thin.
It's just a little thicker than an aluminum can.
Right. Or about the thickness of a credit card.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, good one.
If you're off by a 16th of an inch shim in the rear, you will push the steer tires sideways 253 inches every mile you drive.
Every mile you drive.
Right.
And
so if I divide that by 12, that means that's 21 feet sideways.
21 feet every mile you drive for every 16th of an inch that the thing is off straight ahead.
Well, off from where we want it. Yeah, because we don't want it straight ahead.
Well, but we only really want it less than an inch off anyway.
I wanted a 32nd of shim off, which would be a half an inch.
Right.
But the factory specs, and most of the factory specs I've looked at, using our laser system, the drive axle can be off 2 inches to the left or 2 inches to the right or anywhere in between, and that's in the green.
Right.
So it's double that. It'd be 42 feet sideways every time you drive your own length, and you're in the green.
And you're in the green. So every mile, you're like I said, you can drive 2-3 trucks sideways or side by side through that through the range.
Well, a truck's 8 feet wide, and 42 feet. That's 5 trucks.
5 trucks every mile. You could have 5 trucks in that range.
Right.
So it is honestly a really wide range.
Oh yeah.
That is what we're trying to stop when we align a vehicle. The drive tires, they're not. The drive tires themselves aren't suffering from being aligned improperly.
No, they suffer very little. It's the steer tires that suffer.
They push the steer tires sideways. You've got all your horsepower and all your
3/4 of the weight.
You got everything back there pushing those steer tires sideways. And the steer tires are the most expensive ones.
Well, they're fairly expensive. That's true. They also have no horsepower. They're ones that get blamed for everything.
Yep.
But they're the ones that get abused.
Yes. They're the ones that steer.
Yeah. Our guy with a question looks like he's back. Let's see if we can talk to him.
Guy with a question. 253 area code. I hope you can hear us this time. Are you there?
This is Mike. Am I on?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Hello, this is Mike. Am I on?
Yes, sir. You're on. You have a question.
Go ahead and ask your question.
I have a front steer problem where the tire pulls a little bit to the right, and,
Okay.
and my outside right tire has some wear on it, but it tends to be only in one spot, about a 18-inch section of that outside edge. I also get vibration between 45 and 50 miles an hour.
What was the speed range?
45 to 50 miles an hour.
Okay. All right. Will you feel the vibration as you go up through 45 to 55? Do you feel it again when you slow down, or is it only when you accelerate?
It seems as though I feel it a little bit both directions, but I do feel it more in the accelerations and the decelerations.
Okay. How many miles are on the truck?
About 100,000 miles.
How many? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the mileage.
100,000.
That's not many miles in the truck. Okay. The first suspicion we have is your drive axles are slightly out of where we would want them to be. The second possibility is you might have a little bit of toe in there. The left front tire is wearing just fine.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, it's working just fine.
Okay, so we got a little bit too much toe weight in the front end. We have a drive axle that's slightly out of alignment. Now, the fact that it's only wearing in one section of the tire is not a major problem, because what happens is, as the tire is sliding sideways on asphalt or concrete, it will tend to build pressure and then jump and release, and build pressure and jump and release, and it will tend to wear in one section every time it builds up. So that's what make and model of truck?
Say a 587 Peterbilt.
It's a Peterbilt?
That's correct.
Cool. Does it have the rear suspension that has the big curved spring on it?
Yes, it does.
Okay. That suspension is very sensitive to alignment, because with all the pivot points in it, under engine torque, it tends to move a lot. So you have to set it just a little bit differently than we would set other stuff. But it's alignable. It's not a big problem. It can be done as long as you recognize that. With the Peterbilt, you probably have the preset non-adjustable bearings in the front, which means I don't have to worry about loose wheel bearings, although it should be checked just to make sure we check that. And are these tires that are on it the original tires, or have they been replaced?
No, they've been replaced.
Okay. And what brand of tire are you running now?
They're the Bridgestone 283.
Bridgestone 283. Okay, that's fine. How many miles did you get out of your first set of tires?
Well, I've had two sets of tires, Michelin's, and they went very fast, about 75,000 miles. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna get real picky about this now. Are you going? I assume you've had alignments done. Is that correct? I've had several alignment done, and only until I had it done by Chad did I get any mileage at all out of it.
Okay, so Chad has done this truck, and
yes,
how many miles are on the tires now?
100,000 miles on these tires since he adjusted them.
How many miles are on the truck?
550,000.
Ah, okay, all right. 500,000. All right, now that's starting to make sense on this shimmy, because the shimmy was bothering me. When you feel it shimmy going up in speed, and you feel it again as you come down through the speed range, that tells me we've got a dry spot in the kingpin, or we've got a thrust bearing in the kingpin that's deteriorating, and it's not floating smoothly through the toe change in that speed range. And if you only had 100,000 on the truck, which is what I thought we were having, that didn't make any sense. 500,000. Yeah, 500,000 is starting to make some sense to me there. Okay, the second thing that I would do, I don't know if you said this or not, Everybody makes mistakes once in a while. But the U-bolts on that rear suspension will tend to come loose. And you need to make sure that those U-bolts are good and tight in the rear end when we cut it out. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay, cool. Very good.
The reason
one other piece of information. I actually experimented and I moved that right front tire to the left and basically swapped the tires around. And I get the same sort of scenario, except now it pulls to the left instead of to the right.
Yes.
Okay, then that means the alignment is really close.
Yeah, but I'm still not satisfied. I think it could be a little bit better. In order to mitigate that left pull, you could flip the left front tire on the rim. Leave the right front alone. Just flip the left front on the rim. And that should get rid of the right pull. Get rid of the left pull.
Are you saying that after I what I did was just switch the rim and tire and all previously?
Correct.
So now are you saying just flip the left tire on the rim itself?
Yes.
Just the left one.
Okay. Which used to be the right one.
Right. Creating a pole.
Yeah. Now the idea is that if the right front, the one that's on the right front now, if it's pushing you a little left, and the one on the left front is trying to push you left, if you flip one of the tires on the rim, we want the two tires to work against each other so the truck will drive straight.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It works to get rid of the pull. It doesn't solve the fact that the tire already has some wear, but it makes it handle correctly so you can drive the tires out.
Yeah,
okay.
If you want to solve
there's still a lot of tread left, so I was going to try and see what I could do about that.
Right.
Yeah. If you want to slow down the wear on a steer tire, really the thing you got to do is just move it to the trailer, because as long as it's in the steer position, it's going to get abused. It does it carries weight. It doesn't carry it evenly. It's an incredibly abusive position for a tire.
It gains more weight when you step on the brake than any other axle in the truck.
And it's a lot of abuse to that. So once you see a wear, once you're experiencing wear, it's not going to go away. It's just going to get worse.
And I do carry quite a bit of weight up front also.
What inflations are you running up there?
I'm sorry?
Inflation are you running on the steer tires?
After being with Chad, I bumped them up. I run about 125. Of course, that depends upon the outside temperature.
Well, I wouldn't care what the outside temperature was. I would put that every time I check in the morning. That's the inflation I'd want.
Right.
That is what I try to do.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. All right.
You.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye now.
You.
Bye
Hey, Mike. You have a good day too. All right.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Well, let's see. What was our subject for today?
Specs and factory alignments and aftermarket alignments.
Aftermarket alignments. What happens with an aftermarket? I think we've discussed a little bit of this, maybe the last time with the alignment equipment, and the fact that an alignment shop typically has a warranty that lasts the distance, the amount of time that the vehicle is actually in the shop.
In the shop or until it just crosses the curb. And then they don't want to talk about it anymore.
Because the moment you come back with a problem, what are the chances that you hit a curb or made a sharp right turn?
Or hit a chuck hole. Yeah.
What's another favorite?
There's all kinds of excuses.
You can come up with a lot.
When I was doing alignments all the time, I don't do alignments anymore. I had a 60-day, 30,000-mile warranty on my alignment. Because if I checked the truck out and I made sure it was mechanically sound and I aligned the truck, it wasn't going to change significantly in 60 days or 30,000 miles. And if it did, I'll take care of it. And I very seldom had anybody come back that had an issue that we couldn't handle.
Especially even in that time.
Yeah. There was one fellow that came back to me that was driving FLD Freightliners. And it was a local co-op here in Iowa. And his trucks ran from central Iowa to the river on the east coast of Iowa. Yeah. See, we have a state with an east and a west coast.
We do. The Missouri and the Mississippi.
Yeah, both coasts. So he would run to the river barge drop points with grain, come back here, pick up grain, go back and forth. And this was a long time ago. This would have been in the early 90s. And we were running Michelin XZA1 steer tires. And that particular tire, properly aligned in a line haul, we could average 125,000 miles on. He was getting 60 to 70 to begin with, and when we aligned it, he was getting, as I recall, 130, 140,000. One of his trucks we aligned, and about 45 days later, he called me up and said, "I need the alignment checked on it." I said, "It's no problem, it's under warranty." He said, "Well, this won't be under warranty." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, it got stuck in a farmer's lot." He hooked a farm tractor up to it and ripped the front axle out from underneath the truck. Okay, cool. Is the front axle back underneath the truck now? Yes, it is. I said, "All right, then it's a warranty. I'm not going to repair it, but I'll check it out for you." And when he brought it in, he says, "I don't understand why you're doing this under warranty." I says, "I do it so that you'll tell me the truth. I want to know what happened to that truck." Now, if I give a conditional warranty, then they will come back and tell me a story that meets the conditions of the warranty.
Right.
And then I won't know what I'm looking for.
Right.
And I want to know what to look for.
We don't want to spin our wheels.
Yeah, so it just didn't take very long, and we took care of him, got him squared away, and he went away. And he says, "But I feel bad about this bill." And I said, "Don't worry about it. Just take your wife out to dinner. As far as I'm concerned, this is good marketing, advertising for me. We'll take care of you. 60 days, 30,000 miles, it's not going to be an issue." The vast majority of other alignment people I've dealt with won't give a warranty because with the type of equipment and the process they use, they couldn't put the truck on the alignment machine, measure it, back out of the shop, put it back on the machine, measure it, get the same measurement.
That same day, much less 30 days later.
Right. You know, we get measurements 30 days, 6 months, a year later on trucks, and the measurements are the same. Because until you bend it, break it, or wear it out, it stays where you've put it.
Right.
Now, there's certain mechanical things we have to watch for. The U-bolts on that flex air suspension, that's that Packard suspension with a big curved spring, they tend to get a little loose.
As do the same U-bolts, drive axle U-bolts on Freightliners Internationals.
Freightliners Internationals, they both have the same issue. And the issue with all of those is that the primary suspension bracket on the flex air or the leaf spring on the International Freightliner is underneath the drive axle, and so all the weight is carried on the U-bolts.
Instead of just sitting on top of the axle like a typical spring.
Right. So your steer axle, the spring is sitting on top of the axle, the weight passes directly to the axle, and all the U-bolt's doing is clamping it in place.
Yep.
But if the leaf spring is under the axle, the U-bolt is physically carrying the load.
It's kind of
overworked.
Right.
Yeah.
If they provided larger bolts.
Yes, but they use the same size bolt.
Yeah.
You can look at a Volvo air ride suspension and look at the size and density of the bolt they use, and it's the same size that's on a Freightliner.
Am I not thinking right? Doesn't a Mack Camelback also carry the weight on the U-bolt?
The Mack Camelback suspension carries the weight, and the U-bolt size is so much bigger. For example, on the Freightliner bolt that's used, according to the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, the correct torque for that bolt is 450 foot-pounds.
Right.
Okay. The size bolt that's on the Mack Camelback, the correct torque is 1,200 foot-pounds.
And it doesn't come loose.
No,
I never see a Camelback come loose.
No, they don't come loose.
But Freightliners.
But they're using a much heavier bolt to carry the load.
And that thing carries incredible loads. So, yeah, it's interesting. This design could work better, unfortunately, for weight savings and operational.
Well, there's another question I've always had about that Freightliner International style suspension, and now the Flex Air. The Mack Camelback is tightening the U-bolt against the leaf springs and against a center trunnion, not against a hollow diff housing.
Right.
The U-bolts on the Freightliners and the Internationals are tightening the U-bolt to hollow diff housing. Will the hollow diff housing stand 1,200 foot-pounds of torque, or will it crush?
Good question.
They may not be able to go to that much.
Operational issue. Weight issue.
Design issue. Yeah, it's
right.
a design issue. So they may or may not be able to solve it. All I know is that Freightliner suspension, the Freightliner Airliner suspension, has been the same since that product was introduced in 1990.
Yep.
It's been 25 years. We've had the same problem with that suspension for 25 years. The visual indicator for you is to walk up behind your Freightliner truck with the trailer off, or crawl underneath the trailer if you want to do that. Look at the airbags from the back, and they will be tilted in on the bottom. In other words, the leaf springs move toward each other as the thing loosens up. The Internationals won't show that, simply because the bracket under the axle that the leaf spring sits in is designed so it won't slide sideways.
Right.
So
it still gets loose.
Oh, yeah, the U-bolt gets loose, but the airbags don't tilt, so you don't have the visual indicator. But the axle walks around every time you hit a bump in the road, and you can't hold the alignment.
In fact, maybe this is just because of the vehicles I have worked on that are Internationals, but I think the problem is worse on the Internationals.
Could very well be.
From our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe operation, once again, I think that was episode 3, alignment doesn't cause accidents.
No.
So the fact that it's not holding the alignment maybe matter to the designer, but to us, if you can't hold the alignment, you can't get your tire wearing. You're not a happy person driving down the road.
Right, right. Now, again, if there's anybody that has a question that's listening, just push 1 on your phone. If you'd like a question or a comment on any subject on tire wear handling, we'd be glad to answer your questions. If you push 1 twice, you will erase the question queue for us, and we won't know to go to you. Right. But if you have a question, feel free, punk it up. We'll be glad to talk to you about it. We had another discussion that came up earlier today on Facebook about tall tires, 11Rs, and low pro tires, the 295, 75, or 22.5, or whatever size you want, and which one was better. I responded to that today and said that I don't know, and I don't care.
Nice to know.
All I care is that they're round, they're black, and they're dirty. And it's my job to make them wear as long as I can get them to wear. Mm-hmm. As many miles or as much time, whichever way you want to classify it. I don't care about fuel economy. Fuel economy is not something as an alignment tech that I get excited about. I know the owners of the trucks, and I know everybody listening to Rutherford are really interested in fuel economy, and that's great. And I assume that a properly aligned truck will get better fuel economy than a non-aligned truck. We've done some tests on test tracks and proved that we can get a couple of tenths of a percent improvement in documented improvement in fuel economy because of alignment.
A tenth of a percent, not tenths of a gallon.
Not tenths of a mile per gallon, just a tenth of a percent. But I can really make tires last longer.
I understand why alignment doesn't affect fuel economy like a lot of people think it does.
Mm-hmm.
You assume that if you're pushing a tire sideways, that means you're causing more scrub, and that means
yes.
you're losing fuel.
And you're using energy to do that.
You indeed are. That is all true, and that is the fuel savings that we can get. But
mm-hmm.
you have to understand that we're talking about over tens of thousands of miles, losing only, a couple of pounds of rubber
mm-hmm.
on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So how much fuel does it take to push a few pounds of rubber off, or sand a few pounds of rubber off on an asphalt road?
Well, the simple way to tell that is to take a tire and put it on a grinding wheel and see how long it takes to grind that off.
And how much energy did you actually use?
Not a whole lot.
Right. So.
All right, but the question was, which is a better tire, the 11R tire or the 295/75, a 24.5 tire or a 22.5 tire? And what I explained in my discussion was that the original tires that were run around here were 1020s, 1120s, tube type bias tires. Then radials came into the market. Michelin was the guys that started introducing the radio. They were developed in Europe and they were developed on the metric. But in order to compete in the North American market, they needed to have an 11R or a 22.5 or 24.5 to fit on the rims that we're going to run over here. It didn't take them very long that they wanted to standardize world tires. So every place in the world would run the same kind of tire, and metric measuring systems worldwide were more dominant than our inch system. Because an 11R tire is 11 inches wide.
Right.
A 295/75R 22.5 is slightly wider. It's about 11.3 inches wide. But it is shorter in sidewall than the 11R tire is.
True.
So they wanted us to standardize to that. So there was a lot of pressure to get rid of the 11R tires. We haven't completely gotten rid of them. They're still around. And there is also great pressure to go away from the 24.5 tire completely and go to the 22.5 tire.
Who's providing that pressure?
Again, that's the European industrial market, or worldwide market.
Right.
You'll notice that the 4 1/4 tires, the 425s and the 385s and the 315s and the new 244s and 245s, all are on 22.5 rims.
Yes, they are.
They don't build those for a 24.5 rim because the whole idea is they want to make the 11R sizing and the 24.5 obsolete, so everybody winds up with a standard rim and standard tires.
I figure it's just because they hated me and didn't want me to be able to get under the suspension as easy.
Well, I suppose that's part of it too. The way they sold that to the truck market here in the U.S. was that the excise tax on tires, as I understand it, is based on the weight of the tire. So you're taxed by the pound of rubber. The 22.5 tire weighs less than the 24.5 tire.
Even if it's just a little bit.
It's still differences in pennies.
It bothers them.
And when they sold it to the big fleets, we can save you money in your tires if you'll buy this 22.5 because it weighs less, your federal tax will be less. And then the big fleet says, well, pennies are dollars to us. And so the big shift to the 22.5 came about. There are still people running the 11R 24.5.
Yep.
There's still people running the 295/75 24.5 tire.
I like them.
Because they like that big rim, they like a little more ground clearance. I've heard arguments back and forth about whether there's any fuel savings economy because of the height of the vehicle off the ground. No. I've heard arguments that the 11R 24.5 tire has worse rolling resistance. I don't know.
Given how much they twist those numbers in the first place, I wouldn't.
Yeah. As I understand it, there's 5 different tests that you can use to test rolling resistance.
And they'll use whatever the one they want for their tire to get the best result.
Yeah, it makes it look the best, and I don't care. That's not my business. So in either case, that's where the 11R tire came from. That's where the metric low pro tire came from, and that's the reason everybody is phasing into the low pro, because the dominant numbers of tires sold worldwide are not in the 11Rs. Then the research and development dollars are spent on the metric sizing, the low pros.
Correct.
They're not going to spend money developing a tire that they're not going to sell many of.
Right.
They spend the money on the tires that they sell a lot of.
And once one company starts doing that, it seems like they've all.
Yeah, they're going to have to follow the pattern. Nobody can avoid that. And that's why we're into low rolling resistance, smart way certified tires now. We started with California. It's being pushed all across the country because once their tire company is forced to make a specific tire for a specific state, they're not going to make different tires for the rest of them. Everybody's going to use the same thing. It's just the economics of business. By the way, do you know how much it costs to make one tire mold?
A tire mold.
Just one mold. Over $1 million.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say
over $1 million. Okay? So how many extra molds are they going to make for 11R tires?
As few as possible.
That's right. And so they're continually pressuring people to go to the low pro 22.5s, go to the 295/75s, and we can make one tire. Now, if they're making one mold, they can make 100 molds in the 22.5 size and not have to make 10 molds in the 24.5 size.
Right.
Because those are hard to pay for at the factory because they're not selling enough of those tires.
And yeah, sure, they're the ones that created that situation, but it's not like, again, it's a real good question of whether or not anybody was benefiting from the 24/5 in the first place, except me, because I still got to squeeze into that axle.
Well, thank goodness I don't have to, because I can't.
No, I've seen that belly get big.
It's not going to work. All right. By the way, you can use ramps.
You can.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it's real convenient, but
they're a pain in the ass to haul around.
Yeah, if I can squeeze under there, I'll squeeze in.
Yep.
I just curse the truck the whole time.
Yep. We're getting close to the end of our hour. We have about 10 minutes left. Once again, I'll remind you, if you have a question or a comment you'd like to pop in on, just push 1 on your phone. We'll be glad to get back to you and talk to you about your issue. And it doesn't matter if it's on track with what we're talking about. We'll answer any question that comes up here. We're having a good time doing this. What else should we talk about alignment factories? Settle in.
Very good, important subject.
You take a brand new truck that's been aligned at the factory, that is set to their preference numbers, not just within tolerance, it's right at their preference numbers.
Do they do that? Do they ever do that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Even a blind squirrel finds an acorn once in a while. Get it set perfect.
Oh, not to their target, but within their spec.
To their target, right on their preference.
0-0.
Yep. Deck those trucks up. Take 10 of them, which is what we've done several times.
Did we do that?
Yes, we did.
We did.
Oh, yes. Haul them 1,000 miles from their...
Wait, what did we do first?
They decked them up.
Before.
Oh, we measured them to confirm it.
We measured them ourselves.
Yeah.
We didn't even have to rely on their equipment, their measurement, their processing. We also measured them.
Right.
And they were how close?
They were on spec.
Dead on.
They hauled them 1,000 miles to the fleet. We met them at the fleet with the same technician and the same equipment. We measured them at the fleet, and 50% of those vehicles were out of their specs.
Just off of traveling halfway across the country.
Because you've got brand new frames, brand new springs, brand new bushings, brand new kingpins, brand new airbags, brand new everything. Mm-hmm. And they jostled and settled in across the country. Mm-hmm. We reset them. We ran them 30 days. 25 to 30% of them were wrong at the end of 30 days.
So they were off just in the first few miles, and then again they were off in the first 30 days.
And then we reset them and ran them again, and about 10 to 15% were wrong at the end of the 60-day period. We reset them and checked them at 90 days, and they had quit changing. So new vehicles, the vast majority of them, 80% of them, have a significant settle-in during the first 60 days or 30,000 miles of operation.
Yep.
And if you don't recognize that and take it into consideration in your operation, you'll wind up very unhappy. Now, that was one of the things we found was serendipitous, if you want to use that term. Since I was giving a 60-day, 30,000-mile warranty anyway, the fleets and owners that I worked with, I say, bring your truck in when it's brand new, when you're putting the lettering on the door and stuff. I'll align it brand new, and I'll charge you for an alignment. And then in 60 days, you bring it back and you get it aligned again for free at the end of the braking period.
Now, I got to tell you, working on new trucks, especially within that 60 days,
oh, it's so easy.
It's a dream.
Oh, nothing's broke, nothing's rusted, everything moves.
Everything does exactly what you tell it to. They come apart when you tell them to come apart.
Oof.
Go together when you tell them to go together.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, doing that second check for free is sort of like saying, I wanted a day off.
Sure. Nice and easy. When we're doing alignments on the average truck, not counting repairs, not counting tightening U-bolts, not having to tighten wheel bearings, none of that stuff, the average truck takes an hour and a half to 2 hours to align, just for alignment. A brand new truck, 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's worth at least as much to do that on a new truck as on an old truck.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had a whole series of trucks with one fleet. They bought, I'm trying to remember, 30 trucks over a period of a few months. And he wanted me to align all his trucks as they came in. Now, the interesting thing was the trucks were aligned at the factory. He made the dealer he was buying from align them on their alignment machine. Mm-hmm. And then he says, okay, now I want you to do it. Mm-hmm. Now, just looking at the toe on these 30 trucks, the toe in varied from 3/8 of an inch towed in to a 1/2 inch towed out.
Even after you've gotten them, after the dealer touched them.
And I believe that the mess-ups occurred at the dealership because they were not calibrating their equipment.
I totally believe it.
And these alignments were done these 30 trucks were done over a 6-month period of time. So I suppose if I went back and dug out all the records, I could show you the track of how the alignments changed because of calibration change. But simple fact is they were wrong. Yeah. And it needed to get fixed. We have consumed about another hour here. We have talked about factory specs. We've talked about factory alignments. We've talked about outside alignments. We've had a couple of discussions with some listeners about their particular tire wear problem. I want to thank all of you for listening. We're going to do this again next week. It's going to be a little interesting next week because Kevin's going to be here in the office, and I'm going to be Skyping in from Toronto, where I'm going to be up doing some work. And next week, we're going to discuss caster and camber and what they mean to alignments. Is it myth or reality that you have to worry about?
All right. That sounds like fun.
I thank you, folks. You have yourselves a good day, and we will talk to you again next week.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Rolling Toe. If you like what you heard here, leave us a rating and review on iTunes or listen to our other shows at audioroad.letstruck.com. To get in touch with our tribe, call us at 855-800-FUEL. That's 855-800-3835. Thanks for joining us for the ride down the audio road.